Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. For those of you who participated in my poll after 24 hours, the verdict was that you wanted to see demonstration videos. And I mentioned that in the poll that I'd be using the new Tarot de Jacques Viéville by Artisan Tarot to do these readings. So for those of you who participated, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Now, at the second place winner in the poll was a history of the Jacques Viéville Tarot, and so that may be brewing in the future. I haven't ruled that one out. But for today, it'll be a few demonstration readings using this deck. And it is, that may be the same as other decks because there are a few anomalies in the Viéville for those of you who are aware of the Viéville. There are some numeric and sequential differences in the numbering. And also, although it's concurrent with when the TDM appears to have been developed in 1650, there are some visual differences in some of the cards. And we'll address those differences if they pop up in any of the readings. Now, it's always a problem for me, not that it's a problem, but the greatest challenge for me when you guys want readings, demonstration readings, is to come up with questions. You know, I can't always use questions that are personal to me because I don't always have issues, you know, or issues that I really want to share publicly. And I never use third party. I would never like throw anybody under the bus and say, hey, my daughter this, or you know, my best friend that, right? Or my husband this or that. So recognize that it's, I'm going to have to come, you know, that I have to come up with these fictitious questions. So moving forward, if you guys could do me a great favor, would be to comment, you know, below when I do demonstration readings, you know, especially because I'll always have demonstration readings be part of my repertoire of videos, right? So just, you know, every now and then when you think of a question that you would like to see be used in a demonstration reading, not that I would do it personally for you as far as this is what you ought to do, because I might not get to it for 2 or 3 months, right? But just, you know, give me some questions that you would like to see answered, especially if they're tricky, you know, tricky questions. Okay, so having said all of that, I'm going to go off camera. I'm going, because these are in order, I'm going to meditate, go into my space, and I'll come up with maybe 2 or 3 questions to use in a demonstration reading. Okay, well, for the first reading, I decided to do a real one, and it's regarding me indirectly as a person who will be affected, since it's basically about my husband who will be undergoing his first treatments tomorrow. And I don't want to ask about him because I don't like doing third-party questions, you know, like, you know, about my husband. However, I can do it as it affects me by asking how I can best support my husband in the next few days while he undergoes his treatment, and what I need to know in order to assist him and help him feel better. So although generally it is about my husband, I redirect it so that it involves me, which it does, into how I can help him or assist him, or what I should look for. In you know, maybe he won't tell me things. Sometimes he protects me, so what I should look for in order to best help my husband, who is my sweetheart and the love of my life. I will only do 3 cards. When I meditated, I indicated during the process, which I did off camera, that I would be doing 3 cards. Communication. Well, that's the batons, not the swords. But it is a partnership. He is my partner in crime, so to speak. Let's see what else. A breakthrough, 7 of Swords. And this is him for sure. So before I get into understanding or interpreting the cards, I want to point out, for those of you who are learning and come to this channel for learning, because after all, I don't think you would have voted for demonstration readings if you weren't interested in learning how to read TDM or TDM type cards. You'll notice that the first 2 cards out of the gate have a male energy. We have batons and we have swords. And then we have the last card in the spread is a male, right? And he's, not just any man, but he's a king. So he's the master of his realm, right? So we have a lot of male energy, which of course the week is focused on my husband, which was part of the question. Now we have the gentleman looking in this direction. So it seems as though his mind is definitely, it's on his mind. It's hopefully the treatment will take him to the next level toward recovery. And, some of that depends on, my help and my assistance. There are things that go along with his treatment that I have to actively be engaged in and partnered with. There might be some concern on his part that I'm up to it. Now there's no woman who appears in here. This is all male energy, but I am his partner. Obviously, the treatment is being given to him in order to, break through or to get past his current illness, his current situation. And, we're both hopeful. So I guess as far as what I need to know is just that he's concerned. He's got, it's definitely on his mind. Maybe distract him when I can. But indulge him in male activities, because this is such a strong male spread, right? It's all about him and his manliness. So too bad the World Series is over, because I would just say indulge yourself and watch all the baseball you want, which he already does. So that's nothing new. But I would, not that I allow him to do things. We don't allow each other to do things, we just do our own thing, and we're appreciative of each other being different. But, maybe indulge him a little bit in overlooking some of his male, indulgences. If there's football, that he wants to get involved in watching, I'm not going to say anything that makes him feel better. And it's all about the male energy this week, and it's all about him moving forward with his situation and his illness. I wouldn't pull a quintessential for just 3 cards, because, if there's 3 cards, it's pretty simple. But had we done that, for those of you who are interested in that I do, when I usually I don't pull quintessential cards unless I do like a 6-card spread, something like that. I don't count the court cards. However, some people do, and it's not more correct to do or not to do. For those of you who would put numeric value to the king, it would be 14, but I don't because it's not a numbered card. So I would have 2 and 7, which would bring us 9, and that would bring us to the hermit, which is, you know, an elderly gentleman. And let me pause so you don't have to go through this. Okay, so here we have the hermit, which would be number 9. So you see, he's an elderly gentleman, who my husband is. My husband's an elderly gentleman, and he's walking away from the equation. So yeah, in a way, I guess this 4th card, this quintessential card, helps in understanding what we have here a little bit. He'd like to forget about it. He'd like to just move on, which I know is definitely true for him. He'd like to deny that it's even happening or going on. But, you know, the fact remains that it is on his mind. So as much as he'd like to separate himself from it, it does weigh heavily on his mind. And I think he's, you know, concerned about how it will affect me as his partner. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I, you know, to not allow him, but to encourage him to distract himself with male-centric things that make him happy, because my husband is most certainly a man's kind of man, you know. All right, let's try another reading. I think the next one will be a tirage en croix. Let me go off camera and shuffle and try to come up with another question. The reason I like to do tirage en croix for beginners is because it's a great beginner spread. For those of you who have seen other videos that I've done on the tirage en croix, you probably understand why. Now, traditionally, and I'd probably be criticized by the European among you, you would really only use the 22 triumph or trump cards for the tirage en croix, because that is how it was created with that in mind. However, and when I do, you know, I do my fair share with just the 22 cards, and it's easiest to do a tirage en croix with just the trump cards or the triumph cards, because their meanings are a lot easier to interpret than the nuanced meanings of the pip cards. So I'll do one tirage en croix with the full deck, and then I'll do a third tirage en croix in the more traditional way, whereby I'll just use the triumph cards or the trump cards. So let me go off camera, do my thing, shuffle and mix the cards, and come up with a question. And I just realized my mistake, and before I get a lot of commenters pointing out my error, one of the things that I was referring to before I started with the cards, you know, in the prelude to this video, was that the Tarot de Jacques Viéville has some anomalies, right? And one of the anomalies is in the numeric sequencing. Now, the 2 and the 7, which was in the spread, which I said would be 9 for the hermit, the 9 of this deck would be fortitude. But I, in error, because I was just thinking in terms of TDM and the 9 being the hermit, pulled the hermit, which in this deck is marked as 11. Now, was the hermit intended to be number 9? And was the fortitude card really intended to be 11? Yeah, probably. The images, the images I suspect were carved backwards, which included the numbers, or maybe the numbers were, you know, applied at another point. But in any regard, a lot of the numbers are kind of wonky, and they don't really match the traditional way. But remember, this was 1650, and maybe not a whole lot of people knew the traditional way at that stage in France, and they needed a numeric indicator to tell them which card was worth more. So I think probably during gameplay, they would have seen this as 9 and they would have seen this as 11, rather than in the way that we're so accustomed to seeing it. And so I'm remiss in, saying that this was the card that would have been the quintessential. However, I stand by it because it was my perception at the time that I did the reading. And also, it's so true. It is so true that he would rather be separated from all of this. However, let us go back and look at this card as the number 9 card in that spread, which was the 2 of batons, the 7 of swords, and then fortitude. And then his card being the king of a coin, and then fortitude. And of course, when you're going through what he's going through, what we're going through as a couple, if you don't need fortitude, I don't know what you need. So just to be his rock for him. And I'm sorry that I didn't catch it initially when I did it, but I caught it before I caught it before I got too far in the video. So I wanted to mention that. Okay, so let me finish my shuffling and my mixing of cards and go into my meditative place, and I'll be back. All right, I am going to do a personal reading. Again, it's not about myself directly, but I have concerns for a friend who's been in my life probably for 40 years, who is at the end stage of her life. And I am present for her when she wants to talk. That's basically as much as I can give her at this stage in our lives, is to be present when she wants to talk. And again, I just want to know ways that I can help her or assist her as much as I can, or what she needs from me that she's not telling me she needs. So anyway, I had already, when I meditated, I had said that I was going to do 6 cards, and my intent is to include a quintessential card. So we have the 18, which, is this the moon card or is this the sun card? Because in many decks, the image of this woman with her thread, this is happening during the day. It's a daytime activity, but in the Viéville, it's happening in the evening because we have the number 18. So it's an unusual thing for the moon card. So we have the Queen of Swords, which I think is probably her. Four of Swords. Okay, this is the 10 of batons. And I don't do positional meanings generally when I lay cards, when I do readings for myself, or when I have, when someone says, do a reading for me, and however you do it. I don't typically, I said I was going to do a tirage and quad, didn't I? Well, I'll give you I lied. I'll give you some tirage and quads, I'm sorry. I'll just do this one first, and then the 3 of Swords. So we see a couple of 3s together. We see a 4 and a 10. We have the Queen of Swords, and we have 1 card from the higher order of cards. Now, as soon as I saw the 10 of batons, I understood exactly what this meant, because in the past 40 years, I've really had to put up some barriers with this friend. I've had to distance myself, which is why I'm only, I've only been available for phone calls, because she is the kind of individual that kind of sucks the air out of the room. And in the times that I've been involved with her more actively when I was younger, there's so much drama, that it just exhausts me. And so I put up these very defined barriers with her, which continue to this day. And it breaks my heart because she is dying, However, even in that state, she's, tends to overcross the boundaries with me. But, I can still show compassion, and I can still be available for communication, which is what I'm doing, I still assure her that I care for her, and I listen to her, and I give her advice when she asks me for it. And I leave the lines of communication open. And I'm always available. If she calls at 3 in the morning, I'm available. Right? So I understand this row completely. Now it's this row, that is a little more complicated. We have the Moon card, things that happen that I'm not aware of, perhaps. Something that's going on in the evening of her life. This is her, for sure. She's turning her back. Maybe she had a rough night last night, I'll probably talk to her today, and I'll probably find out what her evening was like. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if something happened in the course of last night that she's in denial of, or that she does not want to dwell or focus on, in pursuit of inner calm or peace. I think I am her calm and her peace. So I won't be a bit surprised if she actually calls me today. Communication, right? The baton, the swords is communication. That she'll turn to me for calm, in communication, regarding an episode that occurred last night. Now let's take a look at what the quintessential card would be. So we have the 18 and 4, that's 22. 22 and 10 is 32. And then 6 plus 32 would be 38. So let's minus 22 until we get a number between 0 and 22. So that number would be 16, and it just coincides that 16 is the card that traditionally represents the message of the Tower. Although here it's a tree, doesn't seem to be directly being struck by lightning or anything like that. But there is a suggestion that maybe, if those aren't red leaves, maybe there's flames. Something celestially is happening. There's some type of divine intervention, at least, that's disrupting the shepherd from his flock. So it would seem that there's been some type of shakedown or some type of event that I'm going to probably hear about this afternoon or this evening. And I don't know how much more disruptive her life can be, because things are happening. It's not just that she's ill and terminally ill, but it's that the drama that's being featured in her life right now is almost as intense as facing end of life. And that's part of the reason why I've put up boundaries, is because in any stage of her life, there's always, this drama that is so intense that, for your own sense of self-preservation, I've had, for my own sense of self-preservation, I've had to distance myself, and it breaks my heart, but that's the truth of the reality of our relationship. the friendship, interestingly, we were acquaintances, actually. And I kept running into her throughout the course of my life. Like we were friends for one summer and we had a lot of fun, but there were a group of us who had a lot of fun. We just had so much fun. But then we went our own ways. And about 3 or 4 years later, I ran into her in a really random place in Philadelphia. So we reconnected, and then we were fun. We had, contact with one another for a number of years. She went to my first wedding when I got married for my first husband. But then I had to put boundaries up, once I had children, because she got into things that were dangerous. And, when she would come to my home, she risked the well-being of my family. And so I had to put the brakes on. And then we separated, and I kind of deliberately removed myself from her being able to find me again when, after I was divorced. And somehow she found me at the age of internet. She managed to track me down and find me. And so we've been in touch, now, I guess I've been divorced about 15 years. I remarried. But the things that made me put the brakes on kind of are still there, And so even though she found me, and I'm always available and I always talk to her and I always show compassion for her, I just maintain that distance. And I guess I feel a little guilty about that because she probably feels as though she needs me more than I'm willing to give and participate in her life. And I do feel some guilt. And I guess that's part of it. But I don't see guilt being expressed here at all. The question was, and the intent was, what can I do for my friend? And how can I assist her, in her end of life here? And it's, I guess, to be available when she needs me, which she does. It's probably something went down through the evening, which I'm expecting to hear about. And it's probably something big based on these two cards. And to just continue to show her, to express that I care for her and love her and allow her to express herself to me. But the barrier is still there, and it will probably always be there, even beyond her life when she leaves the world. I'll probably still, when I think of her, I'll probably put the brakes on a little bit, not to conjure her up. I definitely probably wouldn't, deliberately try to communicate with her as I do with other ones that I've loved, that I've lost, Okay, so this next one will be a tirage en croix, I promise. Okay, so this next one has to be fictitious because I just can't go through any more personal questions. Okay, Thanksgiving in the United States is coming up. It's the month for Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. It's a great secular holiday, even though some people might, argue about it, being about its origins and its history. I see it as a wonderful holiday for family to get together and overeat. At any rate, for a lot of people, it comes down to inviting people, out of obligation to a family thing. There's always somebody in the family who's kind of a problem. I know growing up, there was always the one aunt who, we all held our breath until when she arrived, and we walked on eggshells until she left, but you have to kind of invite them anyway because they're family. So I'm going to pretend that there's a woman who's come to me, who's in charge of the feast for her family this year. And there's an individual she's not too keen on inviting, but she's expected to invite. And so she would just like to know what first of all, should she invite her? So that could be part of the pros and cons of the tirage en croix. And if she is invited, if she does decide to invite this individual, what does she need to look for? So we're going to unveil a few levels in the Tirage and Croix. As you know, and I'll express it when I lay the cards, the first card is pros. So what would be the pros? Well, keeping order in the family, right? Just keeping, like, we're not going to shake things up. You know, if we invite her, the pro would be that it's expected of you to invite the aunt or whoever it is. My aunt's been dead for a long time, so it's not my aunt. I'm just using that as, you know, an example. But, you know, maintaining order in the family, right? The con, oh, the con is that she might act up, whoever this individual is. There may be like incidents, you know, with her. So we have to expect and be prepared for it. What to focus on would be the third card in the Tirage and Croix. To focus on another 4. So focus on stability, focus on your words, you know, not to be argumentative, but to use peaceful words. You know, whenever there's something brewing, you know, between others, try to be the calm, to restore calm or to bring peace to the equation, especially verbal, because words do hurt. The outcome, the likely outcome, given the circumstance as they are right now, would be, and again, we see an anomaly in the Jacques de Viéville deck where we have the Hanged Man who is upright. Now, and it is number 12 if we look at the card this way. Now, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm just going to say it. It was supposed to be this way. You know, it was supposed to be a hanged man. I don't think it was printed properly, which is why it appears in this way. However, this is the way that this particular deck delivers the Hanged Man. And it happens to be 12. So the likely outcome, well, if we look at the Hanged Man, the way I look at the Hanged Man and how I interpret it is, you know, consequences for behavior or some type of humiliation or some type of shame. And if you want to see that as a reversal, which I don't, because I don't read reversals in TDM, I just don't, you know, it's kind of like an anti-TDM thing to do. You know, but if you are inclined to say, well, you know, try to, you know, the outcome will be, you know, a lack of shame or a lack of, the outcome will be more congenial than this. I don't know. I'm going to read it the way I read the Hanged Man because that's how I feel about this card. So even though the anomaly of the deck would call for this, I don't read reversals. I just don't do reversals in TDM. I just don't. So I wouldn't see it as a different meaning. Okay, so there it is. So, and especially since we have the devil here and we have, you know, behaviors have consequences. So bad behavior has consequences. So yeah, there's probably going to be some drama. Now let's take a look at the quintessential message. We have a 4 and another 4, which is 8. We have 15, so 8 and 15 would be 23. And then 23, oh, now it's, you know, and this. So then, okay, so we have 23 and 12, right? Which would be 35, right? But then, because I flipped the card, it really reads as 8. But we've already established that the number 8 card was the Hermit. So, and it's clearly not intended to be the number 8 card. So I'm just going to go with it with being 12. So what did I say? I said, and I got to count it again. Okay, so it's 35 minus 22, which brings us to the Death card. Or the number 13 card. Let's see what the 13 card. I think they got that right. I think the Death card is the number 13 card in this deck. Of course, it's going to be at the end. Here we go. All right, so, and the quintessential message is what we can expect. So there's going to be some misbehavior. There's going to be consequences for the misbehavior, right? There's, the one thing that, to try to avoid all this is just for the individual who's giving the party to try to encourage peace with words and try to discourage fighting. However, maybe it's not going to be possible. And, it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You sort of have to invite the individual in order to keep peace in the family as a general thing. But the consequence of inviting the individual would be melodrama. And the end, or the parting of ways, maybe this will be the last time this individual is invited or the last time they want to go. So, so she might nip the whole thing in the bud and say, although it's what's expected of me to keep the peace in the family, and even if I go into it intending to keep the peace and to encourage everyone and to plead with everyone before she arrives to keep the peace, this stuff is still going to happen, or there's a great possibility that this stuff will happen. And so you have to weigh it, right? You have to weigh it. And I would say to the individual, this stuff is probably still going to happen, whether you invite her or not. And although you'd be inviting her to sort of keep the peace or to do what's expected of you, because 4 is a number of stability, and in a way it's like to keep the peace or to do what's expected of you in this context, it still might not affect the change. Okay, now the last reading I'm going to do will be using only the higher order cards, which is how Oswald Wirth intended this reading or this spread to be done. So I'm going to pull all the Triumph cards, and I'll come back and I'll have another question. Alrighty then, and this reading I've just restricted the cards to the 22 higher order Trump or Triumph cards, and it's going to be another fictitious reading. A gentleman who is concerned for the direction his stepson is going in. He's got concerns as the stepfather, but overstepping his boundaries, perhaps because the child has a natural father. But he doesn't like what's going on with the youth. And because basically the youth lives with him, he feels as though, he's got to intervene in some way without, aggravating the mother or overstepping his boundaries. Okay, so for this, I am just using the 22 Trump cards. Pros, the World card. Now, he's concerned about the youth, so what do the pros have to do, with the World? We'll try to put it together. The cons. What to focus on. And you see that the numbers are different. We have 9 for fortitude. We have, I think this was a 7. This is a 7 for justice. And we have the 2 of the female pope. And let us add the numbers. We have 21 and 7, which is 28. 28 and 9 gives us 37. And then 37 and 2 gives us 39. Not 3 plus, 39 minus 22 would give us 17, which is the star card. Well, let's see if it is the star card. Now, I guess I should have mentioned this in the very beginning. When you use a deck like this that has a lot of anomalies, particularly in the numeric sequencing, you have to decide whether or not you're going to interpret the deck with the idea that, justice would be 8 and, fortitude, would be, that justice would be, justice would be 8 and fortitude would be 11, right? Or whatever other issues that the deck has. Or you could just say, I'm going to read the deck. And so, although I did make a mistake in the very first reading where I did just interpret, the 2 and the 7 to be the 9 of the Hermit, and then the Hermit really wasn't that. I really do think, it's important to read the deck, because whatever foibles a deck has, that's that deck you're using. So, okay, but in this case, the 17 happens to be the star, which is the standard for number 17 anyway. Okay, so we have a gentleman who is, concerned about his stepson who seems to be going in a wrong path. And I don't know if he knows what to do, or he does. It's just a general question and a general concern. Well, the pros are that the kid's probably going to end up okay, or because the kid is in a safe environment with you and the mother. I'm talking to the client here, with you and the mother, and he does have a father, so he has a safety net, and he's actually in a better place than you imagine. The cons is that the kid's got a strong free will, right? The kid is, stubborn and maybe resists, advice given, especially if it's from somebody who's not his direct parent. So that it would be the con, is that, maybe we have 2 men in the household, even though the kid is not a male, is not an adult. He's still a male, expressing his boyhood power, So we have a little bit of the headbutting probably, and that's probably what this is. Focus on fairness, even though this might not be the number 8, which would be in support of a sense of lack of chaos and order, because number 8 for me is the number of organization and lack of corruption. But this is a 7, so I'm not going to really look at it as the 7. I'm going to look at it as the Justice card. Is to just be fair, the focus position, right? This position is the focus position. So to just be fair with the kid, just try to be as fair as you possibly can be. Be objective rather than emotional. There are no real cards of emotion here, with the exception of the mother. Right? The mother is, the one who is ultimately in charge of the boy in that particular household. So take the mother's cue, listen to the mother. If the mother her instincts say this, support the mother in this regard. Ultimately, the quintessential message is that things will be okay. And it's right next to the World card, right? So the kid's going to be okay. So just continue to be fair. There's going to be resistance because you have 2 men, or a man and a man-child butting heads. But take the cues from the mother and listen to her instincts, which are probably good in this instance, and have the faith that things will be okay with the kid. Sometimes, the kids that had the most trouble in school or whatever ended up being geniuses and famous millionaires and movie stars. And not that that's necessarily a goal that we all want. They usually end up being okay, Okay, friends, so that was enough, I think, for today. Thank you very much for being here, as always. And I don't ask for it enough, and I should have asked for it more in the beginning. But if you could give me a like, and also if you could answer the question I asked in the very beginning. Give me ideas for questions for reading demonstrations, because it really does get difficult to, it really does get difficult trying to come up with fictitious questions all the time. And I really don't prefer to put my life out there, in the public for all to see. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.